Good morning, Inez.
Good morning, Doreen.
This morning we're interviewing Inez Cooper. Inez has been interviewed by Doreen McLeod and technician Sam Mark. We're at the Western Bay of Plenty Service Centre, which is the library and the information centre as well. And it's Tuesday, the 19th of June 2018. Now, Inez, tell me a little bit about your where you were born and where you were growing up and all that sort of background.
Okay. Well, my name is Inez from my great aunt on my grandmother's side. Margaret Marnie is my father's mother, and I was a Wright. You know, the initials I'm Wright. My first marriage was Rendell. My second marriage was Cooper, so I'm Inez Cooper. I was born in Northcote in Auckland on the 7th of November 1937. And I always thought Guy Fawkes Day was there for my birthday. So I was the oldest child of two daughters. My father was the middle son of a family of three whose father had died in the First World War. My mother was the only child of a couple whom she discovered later in life had never married. And Dad's mother was Mum's mother's washerwoman. So we lived with my mother's mother and what had been their beach home after they'd lost their property in Pitt Street, and that was my enchanted childhood. We were close to the beach. We had a stream, a creek actually, down at the bottom of the garden. It was a good half acre. My mother and grandmother were both gardeners, so there were trees and flowers, a lemon orchard. There were places to hide. I lived in my imagination. I roamed the beach. I had an enchanted childhood until about the age of 10 when we moved to Hamilton.
What happened to the property in Pitt Street?
I have a feeling that Grandpa's brother was into speculation, and I'm not sure. And I think he lost an investment, and then the property was lost. So they moved to Northcote to this, what had been their beach home, which wasn't a substantial home. It was a Californian bungalow, but it was more than adequate for us. Nana had her own room, Mum and Dad had a bedroom, we girls had the sun porch, and there was a big formal sitting room. But to me, when I can't sleep, that's where I go.
That's really lovely. So you've just been sharing with us about your family. I'd like to hear a bit more about your childhood. And I know that you lived with a lot of imagination and fairies and things in the garden. But we also want to know where you went to school, something about your childhood at school. So can you tell us about that?
Lots of things.
You're going to have fun there.
Well, I can remember Northcote was on the peninsula, and halfway, just up the road from us, was the Methodist church where we went to Sunday school, and the self-help, I think it was, and just a little bit down was a big 2-story house, which was the kindergarten, and it had a big bamboo bush at the back there, and I went there, and my boyfriend in those days was Kelvin Tremaine, the rugby player, and so we went from kindergarten up to the Lake Road corner to the Northcote Primary School, and there I loved school. Miss Guppy was the infant mistress with Mrs. Buckland in Primer 3 and 4. Miss Wright was Standard 1. Mr. Blampede, Standard 2. Mr. Dibble, who was tough, he gave me the strap once for talking too much, was Standard 3. And I was longing to get into Standard 4 with Mr. Reed, the headmaster, because he was a lovely man. But the what do you call that paralysis thing? Infantile paralysis came, and we stayed home and did correspondence. But it was a lovely school. The boys allowed me to play with them. I had friends galore. Patricia lived out towards Takapuna. Erica lived up the hill. June and Molly lived down by me. I'd used to walk home up the hill just about to Birkenhead with Erica. Sometimes I went down through the Maori bush with the boys just to see what they were doing. More often than not, I went with Margaret down to the Waimana estuary and then home round the beach, so I used to get quite muddy doing that. And the rest of the time I'd go down through Mr. Bailey's farm to the playground. But I was always getting told off there. The beach I played on a lot.
Excuse me a second.
It comes and goes. It's the tap probably. The beach was my playground. I nearly drowned once, stepping off into a pool and realising I couldn't swim. I learnt pretty quickly. There were cliffs. I wandered. It was a safe place to be, and I just, as I say, it was my enchanted childhood. Dad often promised that he would take us camping up in the Waitakaris, but we didn't have a car. So we used to catch the ferry over to Auckland, catch the tram car. His mother lived at Greyland, so we'd visit her. We went to the zoo, we went to the museum, we went to the art gallery, we went up Mount Eden, up One Tree Hill. We went out to, I think it's Green Bay, out on the Manukau. Dad took us lots of places. He was a movie fan. So when all the Walt Disney movies came, we went to all of those. I can remember the, the Civic Theatre with the, I don't know whether they were elephants or lions with the green emerald eyes and then the stars in the ceiling.
And the organ coming up.
Yes, the Wurlitzer. Yes, it was a fantastic childhood. I was greatly loved. I was secure. The school used to have a fancy dress ball every year, and I was always dressing up. You could always find me draped in something, and I was somebody else. But it was, and my nana, she was my rock in many ways. She was mostly bedridden, but she taught me my Bible stories and was my comfort. Dad was my hero. He was a stern man. My sister, whom I don't think I treated very well, really. I think I was a precocious child. He was my hero. Anything I wanted to know, he would explain. If he couldn't, he'd buy me a book. Books were very important. So, I was blessed to have a really, as I say, enchanted childhood.
You haven't said very much about your mother.
No, poor Mum. She was in the background. Mum was a gardener. She cooked us good meals. She hated cooking, but she cooked us nice meals. She and Nana sewed for us, knitted for us. It wasn't until I was married and going through some trauma in my first marriage that I realised just how strong and how good my mother was to me. You make me weepy if I start talking about that. Yes, right. But no, it was Dad, and then it was Nana, and then I guess poor Mum came a third place.
During the Second World War, you would be old enough to remember the rationing that took place, and people had to do without. What can you share with us?
Well, I can't remember that it had much impact on us in many ways. We had chooks, we had Mum, and by this time Mum was the gardener. We had two big vegetable gardens. I can remember going up to the self-help with Mum to shop and getting sugar. I was always getting growled at for using too much butter. I love butter still. But it didn't seem to have too great an impact on us in the way we lived. Dad didn't earn a lot of money. He was a draftsman with a P&T. So we lived within our means, and Mum managed extremely well on very little. And we ate well. Yes.
I think a lot of women did in those days.
Yes. What I remember most about the war years are the various friends of Mum and Dad's in uniform. Dad wasn't able to join up because of his occupation and communication, and I think he might have had some form of disability. I'm not sure what, but it
probably
was
flat feet.
Yeah, yes. He wore glasses. I think it could have been his sight, and I think he had rather a bad hernia too. But I remember servicemen American servicemen. Chewing gum.
Yes. Now we've talked about your primary school education. What about the next stage of your education?
Oh, well, by that time we'd moved to Hamilton. Dad got a transfer and we moved, and we were living in Clarence Street opposite the gasworks then. I finished my primary schooling at Hamilton West. By the time we moved there, I was 10 going on 11. I matured. I grew. I had my hair cut. It went curly instead of being quite heavy straight. And it was different. And school was different. Finished primary school there. I enjoyed it. Didn't get on with Mr. Sparks in Standard 5, but that was okay. We went to the tech for our cooking classes and woodwork classes, and I bought a bike against Dad's wishes because everybody else biked, and the only person who didn't was a girl who came from the Nest, the orphanage, and it's one of the regrets I have that I didn't stay and walk with her and be more friendly. But then we went on to high school, and it was mixed high school then, Hamilton High School, and Dad said that I had to take something useful, so I did a commercial course. So I remember all the teachers from there with shorthand and typing. The principal was Mr. Tate, Spud. We had the headmistress for bookkeeping. And yes, it was a good school. I enjoyed school. I enjoyed my studies. We did English, social studies, biology, maths, which I didn't like, bookkeeping, shorthand and typing, and art. And Miss Jolly was the art teacher. Dad was always on at me about my printing because as a draftsman, he printed beautifully. But no, it was good. We had a big swimming pool down in the hollow and spent a lot of time there. I used to run and play basketball. Yeah, I never got into any of the drama or anything like that. I don't know, I was more outside, rushing around being silly, I think. And there were lots of boys to ride home with.
Obviously, you like to ride home with the boys.
Oh, did indeed. Boys were the fact of life.
Now, after you've just been talking about some of the games you played, like basketball.
Yes. No, it was netball, actually.
Netball.
Yes.
Oh.
That's well, it's the nine-a-side netball, you know,
yes.
And you played in the three places. I
Yes.
was a defence because I was tall. Dad was very strict with me. I wanted to row. No, you couldn't do that, make your shoulders too big. I wanted to march. No, you'd show your legs off. That's not the thing to do. I wanted to play indoor basketball. No, that was too rough. He was stern and he was strict and very protective.
Well, with two daughters, I'm not surprised.
Yes, but poor Verna got a little bit overlooked. She was a bit scared of him.
So what did your sister do? I mean, did she continue her education?
Oh yes, she ended up in the Ruakura Soil Research Laboratories, and she's been a potter and has done well with her potting. I know she's a different type of person to me. She thinks I'm a bit flighty and over the top.
She's a more serious type?
I think so.
Now, after completing your education, did you go to night school?
Oh, yes. Now, in 1953, and I was in the fifth form, Dad decided that there was going to be a financial recession, and jobs were going to be hard to come by. And he was the senior draftsman in the Divisional Engineer's Office of the P&T, and there was a position going for a junior shorthand typist. So he took me out of school and I got the job. Now, I was very fortunate, but I didn't realise it until some years later, but the head typist, Miss Sadie Sowry, was a retired missionary from India, and the senior supervisor of the main office was Mr. Theo Heath. And he was a brethren man. Now, after lunch, he would give me dictation from Hansard, and Miss Sowry would then correct it and correct my shorthand and give me, contractions and things that I could use in the engineering and communication side of things. I needed English for the exams, so I did go to night school for English. And by the time I was 17, I was a fully qualified government senior shorthand typist.
Can you explain what the P&T is?
Oh, Post and Telegraph. Sorry.
I know what it is.
Yes.
But
yes, people don't, not
people
now.
Won't know.
No, that's true.
But did you enjoy that job?
I think I did. Dad, I had to walk to work with Dad. We started at 8 and we left home at 7:30 and walked, rain, hail or shine. There were 6 of us in the office, 2 older girls and 3 younger women about my own age. And funnily enough, they were all Catholics. So we got on quite well together. In fact, I have photographs of us at various functions together. We also, with the girls downstairs in the postmaster's branch, formed a relay team because they used to have inter-house or inter-business athletic matches, and we won the cup for the relay team, so that was good. Yes, I did enjoy it. I didn't know anything different, really, did I? No.
How much were you being paid?
Well, now that I've been thinking about that, and I can't remember the exact amount. I can't remember whether it was when I started there or when I was at Cooney's that I was getting £10 a week, but I don't think it was there. I think it was when I started at the P&T. But my mother was absolutely horrified that a girl my age was getting a wage that she and Dad had married on. So it was possibly about £5 or something like that. She made me pay rent, which I discovered later on. She banked for me, so when I came to be married 4 or 5 years later, she presented this amount of money for me to buy a trousseau. So
how about that?
I was spoiled.
Now, so earning this good wage, it is probably a good wage for somebody of your age at that time. So what other luxuries did you allow yourself?
Clothes. Mum had taught me to sew, and I had always made my own clothes. So I continued to make my own clothes and bought the occasional ready-made garment. Apart from that, nothing really.
So you made your clothes using paper pattern?
Yes, definitely.
Tell me about that.
Well, it was just our way of life, I think. You went and you saw a nice dress or something in a magazine, looked up for a pattern for it, bought the fabric. I think Mum had an old treadle sewing machine, so we used that. It was just the way we were. I remember one of my friends in the office there, she used to knit a lot and I didn't knit. She crocheted and did all these kind of things and I didn't. I read a book. Anyway, to prove to her that I could knit, when I met my first husband, I knitted him a jersey, just to prove that I could. I mean, my grandmother had always been a woman who did fancy work and crochet and all that type of thing, and she had taught me how to do it. But no, I was more interested in going swimming or reading a book or out with my mates.
Now, I know that you've been, like getting out and about, meeting up with the boys. So what else did you do in your leisure time?
Not a lot, really. Dad didn't allow me to go out a great deal. When we lived in Hamilton, we were allowed to go to the pictures on a Saturday afternoon, not every week, but my girlfriends and I would go to the pictures on a Saturday afternoon. Cost us 9p or something like that, and have an ice cream in the milk bar. In the summertime, we'd go up the lake swimming or ride our bikes along the riverbank. I played basketball, netball still. But no, life was pretty much close to home.